Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Your Gray Matters podcast. I'm Jason, along with my dad, Neil, as always. Hey, Dad, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Hi, everybody.
Yeah, good, good. Well, we have a really unique podcast this week. It sort of continues on from last week's podcast, which was all about the opportunities that are available should you need medical support in the future. Not necessarily right now, but in the future. And today we have a story of someone who needed it right now. And it's someone who you know pretty well, Dad, as do I. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, today you're going to meet Jason's grandmother, who happens to be my 91-year-old mother. And in September, she took a tumble and she broke her ankle and she broke her heel. And she wanted to give a report of what it was like being in the hospital system through three different hospitals, Jason.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good one to listen to and to understand what can happen. And it was just great to hear about, not to spoil anything, but the level of care that she received, which is awesome.
Yeah.
We will note that we did have a technical glitch during the first few minutes of the recording. So you will see just a still image of Bubby, of your mother, of Sylvia. You will see just a still image of her for the first few minutes, but then we're back into our normal awesome side by side view where we can see both your cute faces.
Almost
So,
the same face.
the same face, almost all three. So, remember to like and subscribe in the description of today's podcast or today's video, regardless of how you're watching. You will see links to our new Instagram and our new X, formerly known as Twitter. So, please click on those links and give those accounts a follow as well. It really, really helps getting the word out about the podcast, in addition to liking and subscribing to this episode. I think that's everything. Anything else?
Nope, let's rock and roll.
All right, enjoy.
Hi, everybody. I'm Neil from Your Gray Matters, and welcome back. We're glad to see you. We have a really special guest on today. She's right here, almost looking at me. And you've heard about her because this is my mom. And I'm not putting on my mom just so that you can be introduced to her. This is a very special event today. This is a serious discussion. And it actually follows our very good podcast last week with the people from My Dignity. If you didn't see it, you'll want to tune into that one too. It talks about the difference between planning long-term care or care if you need it in the hospital or in a facility now versus being an emergency manager in the future to try and put it all together. A number of months ago, my mom, Sylvia, hi, Sylvia, welcome to the show.
Hi, nice to see you.
Thank you. My mom had the unfortunate experience of having an accident at home and ended up in the hospital for quite a while. She's now, thank God, back at home. But it gave us good introduction as family, and certainly for my mom as the patient, into what can be expected or what happens that isn't expected. And we wanted to have Sylvia on the show today to talk about her experience in hopes that perhaps it will be interesting to you, but more importantly, it might give you some protection or some ideas if something does happen to you. Sylvia, Mom, welcome to Your Gray Matters. We are really glad to have you on the show. And I often brag about my mom if you've been paying attention to the show. I do brag about her because my mom is unique. She's 91 now. But until a little bit before your accident, Mom, you were really active. You're still very active, but you did a lot of amazing things for a woman, like driving, like lifestyle. Talk a bit about how your life was prior to your accident.
Well, actually, prior to my accident, a year prior, I stopped driving And this changed my life completely because I no longer could go out on my own. I developed difficulty coming up the stairs to the veranda and needed assistance.
Yeah.
So my life was already curtailed by that. But prior to that, I was very active, driving, shopping, and before the pandemic, going to aquafit classes, sometimes 4 and 5 hours a week, which certainly kept me strong. People who only observe it from the deck think you're not doing anything till they get into the water. Anyways, that's a different topic. And what actually happened to me for what I call my 4 month trip, I actually tripped getting out of a walk-in shower and fell and broke 3 bones in my ankle, 2 in my leg, and my hip, my heel bone. That was why I couldn't put my foot down. I couldn't do anything for a very long time in the hospital.
And this happened at home, not at the pool, of course, but
Right,
yes.
this was home. And luckily, I had a new neighbor sharing the house with me, and she came a running and helped me.
No.
Wonderful young woman, her first year of university. Anyways,
Yeah, we were
she's
very lucky to have you there. I've always been curious myself, Mom, but when you fell and she came to help you, and of course you called the ambulance, I know because I was on my way to visit you, and instead I got a call from from your Lifeline people saying that you had had an accident. But
okay. First of all,
yep,
it's life as sure.
okay,
Second of all, they came because I swung the thing in the air to indicate there had been a fall. What happened was when I fell, I was naked, of course. I had water running in the shower on things that would plug up the shower and flood the house. I inched my way on my wet butt to my bed where my phone was, and my finger hit contact, and her number came up because I had just put it in. And I pressed to call, and it rang once my finger slipped off. That's when I picked up the Life Assure and swung it. And their voice said, "We're sending an ambulance."
I think
And she ran upstairs.
and I think it's important, Mom, that I'm glad that you had that Life Assure system. Wasn't quite where you wanted it when you were in the shower, but generally having a product like that for someone who's living basically at home was a good tool for you, and it brings a lot of comfort to us in the family that you had that day.
Yes, and I always have it on when I'm alone in the house.
Yeah, and it's definitely something to think about. Everybody is a system that
Right. But
people.
now we're getting off topic because the only thing I want to say about that experience is luckily the ambulance was close by. Luckily, this young woman had no problem doing what the EMT asked her to do, which was hold my broken foot while they took me in the wheelchair down out of the house. Unbelievable.
Yes.
Anyways,
But
so I get, whatever.
no, it's very, very important. Luckily, there was someone there, but not everybody has someone there. And I didn't want to, we're not going off topic, but it is good to have a signaling system that
Oh, for
help you if you fall. I'm curious, so you got to the hospital, and oddly enough, it was the first of what turned out to be 3 places to live in your 4-month journey. And I
right.
always found that very, very interesting. But before we go there, I found during that experience that you were positive and you were motivated to get the heck out of the hospitals and to get back. I'm curious, How did you stay positive and how did you manage to do that?
Well, it's very simple. I was completely bedridden in the beginning. One quick incident, a few hours after my surgery, I came to hear a young man saying, "I am your nurse. I've come to change your diaper." And I sort of, in my head, went, huh. And then I realized, of course, I have a grandson who's a nurse. Now, of course, I said, sure, fine. He had brought female witness with him for protection of both of us. Interesting.
Yeah.
Anyways, the reason I could keep my attitude was that here I am, completely bedridden. Everybody is taking care of me. Why would I be in a bad mood? That would be ridiculous. There was no reason to be in a bad mood. The, the fact that I was clumsy and fell is my fault, not theirs. And they waited on me literally hand and foot. I could not raise myself to a sitting position. I couldn't do anything. And they took care of me. So, of course, my attitude was positive.
And would you
Besides, I'm that kind of a person.
and would you say, Mom, because we hear so much about, the challenges in the healthcare system and the staff are so run off their feet, and they absolutely are. And yet, from what you've told us and what you experienced, they were terrific, committed, hardworking, loving people.
Right. I never had to ring for a nurse and wait.
Wow.
I found that if I rang for a nurse and they were busy, they stuck their head in the door and acknowledged the ring right away and explained what they were doing and when they would be back. There was no reason to have anything but a positive attitude. I had nurses come on duty and say, "Oh, today's my good day." And I'd go, "Why?" They'd say, "Because you're my patient and you're always in a good mood." So it works both ways. I'm in a good mood, they're in a good mood. Nurses, no matter what, are always in a good mood. Even when they're not, they are. And I never saw any creepy, crabby, or anything kind of nurses. They were all terrific, male and female.
That's really good.
So the thing that I did not know and that I wanted to explain, because it was most interesting, I was in the first hospital, I had surgery, found out that I actually had one more broken bone than they first had estimated, which meant I had to be placed on my face down. And they give you a styrofoam foam to stick your face in so you can still breathe, whatever. I only realized 2 days ago that I was very lucky because I didn't have any negative effects from the anesthetic, which are very common. It's very common to be sick for quite a while after and dizzy, and I didn't have any ill effects. So I had the surgery. It was explained to me that you cannot go from a hospital to rehab unless you are at least 50% mobile. And I would not be because I still had a cast. And I was then taken to North York General Reactivation Center, which is the old Branson Hospital, remodeled. I was patient number 20 in a 30 ward area. I had a private room, absolutely gorgeous, wonderful staff. It seemed there was a nurse and PSW pair linked all the time. And they each had different duties, and they were both wonderful. And there were not quite as many male nurses there. interesting because in North York General, it was almost 50-50. Slight aside, when maintenance was called for in two of the hospitals, the maintenance person who came to fix was female.
Yeah.
They have female maintenance as far as technical maintenance, as far as fixing machinery. They're women.
Well, that's
So,
great. So it's an equal opportunity
yeah,
for the right
yeah,
person.
there was.
I just want to clarify something if I can, just for our viewers. So you started off, first of all, when the accident happened, they took you by ambulance. They took you to the first hospital, which happened to be North York General in Toronto. You had your surgery there. You had a recovery there, but at about 50% mobility, they moved you to the second
No,
hospital. So just review that
yeah,
again.
right. That's right. I had only 50% mobility because I could not use my foot. There was a cast, but about 2 weeks into that cast, somebody came, cut it off, and put in a much bigger cast. But I was not allowed to put my foot down. So I was taken soon after that to the reactivation center.
Okay.
When I got there, within a few days, they were trying to get me to sit in a wheelchair rather than sitting in the bed all the time, because the seat in the wheelchair was firmer, etc., less likely to get bed sores. I already had one that was quite severe. Anyway, in the beginning there, it took 3 people to get me from my bed to the wheelchair. The wheelchair was drawn tight close to my bed. There was a walker, which is a 2-wheel walker. I put my hands on that. Somebody lifted me with my left armpit. Somebody stood in front of the walker so it couldn't move and put their foot out so I could put my cast on top. And another one was around the side, close to the bed, who literally reached around the back and grabbed the top of my diaper to pull me up. On my one foot was a non-skid sock that the hospital provides. Try to turn that. Well, it's the only leg you're standing on, and you have to turn your body. So you have to turn your foot, okay, to get yourself into the wheelchair. Okay, so I'm there like that with the cast. 7 weeks after the surgery, because I'm 90, I was 91, I don't heal as fast, of course. So the cast was on about 2 weeks longer than normal. And of course, I'm a walking hardware store now. So they took me back to the fracture clinic at North York General. They cut off the cast. I had x-rays, they cut off the cast, and they put on a boot. The boot was all the way up to my knee and made of a lot of Velcro and straps, and it was 2 pieces that you have to fit together. Now I was supposed to start to try to walk on it. So I went in that hospital from needing 3 people to put me into a chair to getting into the chair by myself with somebody watching. They say, don't do this on your own. I pay attention. They tell me, don't you try to do this by yourself. It's not safe. I don't do it. I do what I'm told because they're there to get me better. So I did what I was supposed to do. So anyways,
Hang on, that's an important point though, Mom. Hang on, I'm going to interrupt you. What you're saying is, the message that I'm hearing from you is you're far ahead in healing if you do what you're told, because some people don't listen. Some people love to prove that they can be faster than anybody else in healing. In the end, what you're saying to me is you participated by doing what you were told to do by professionals. And that's very likely why we got you home a hell of a lot faster than it would have been if you didn't do what you're doing. Just clarify one other thing, and I'm sorry to interrupt. So you were at North York General for the surgery. You were where as long as you were there, but now what you're talking about, you went to the second place called Reactivation at the Branson Hospital in Toronto. And that's kind of a new step, I think,
Well,
and so explain that.
I thought it was a new step, but basically it's what used to be called a convalescent hospital. I
Okay.
don't think it's completely new. But the interesting thing I wanted to also talk about, I'm glad you interrupted me, I might have forgotten this. They entertain us inmates. And people say, inmates? I said, well, you're an inmate. You can't get out of there. So they come and take you in a wheelchair. Everybody's in wheelchairs. Nobody can walk. And all these people show up, physical therapists, and I don't know where they come from. And they take you to things like arts and crafts, where you get to use round-ended scissors that they must have picked up from a daycare. And they have all these things for you to work on. And then they take you to sing along karaoke. How wonderful. I was having, sometimes according to them, a difficulty with my oxygen absorption. And to go there and to be able to sing and to carry a tune, it was wonderful. Such wonderful therapy, even though maybe later I had to have oxygen again. Why, I don't know. I don't have oxygen at home and I'm fine. But anyways, they entertain. Who ever heard of a hospital that entertains the bedridden people and all the trouble they have to go to take like 15 or 20 people with multiple casts and braces and bring them through corridors and elevators down to a room so that they can have fun together. I mean, we're all sitting there like little kids laughing at this arts and crafts we would have done in grade 2. It's pretty funny, but it's wonderful. So I'm sure a lot of hospitals would like to, but it probably costs money to have all those people. That hospital also has a gym for reactivation. I was in there one time only, but November the 8th, I was moved to Baycrest because I now could get into the wheelchair by myself. Okay. So I was considered mobile. The boot was on. The boot I had on was on 23 hours a day. I slept with the boot. Because of my age, the bones weren't healed enough. So I had to keep the boot on. I took it off for an hour and put it back because in very short time after moving to Baycrest, I was able to do it myself. So every step I kept working at. But then the wounds were not healing, the surgical wounds. So the wound doctor said I had to have the dressing changed every day, and I had to have a compression sock put on. That I could not manage.
So, Mom, wait a minute. So you're in facility number 3 now. Now you're at the Baycrest Hospital.
Right.
What was I just want to make sure our listeners understand. What was the requirement to go there? Where were you in your healing process to now be moved to this third facility?
I could get into the wheelchair on my own. Plus, I was walking with physical therapists in the reactivation center like this. I say you walk with your entourage. There's a physical therapist walking beside you with their hand on your back. There is one following with your wheelchair. And you walk all together. And the wheelchair is, you may say, I need to rest. And so you can sit. And you learn how to use your brakes properly. Because if you don't, when you're about to leave the hospital 3 months later, one day you end up sitting on the floor because you forgot to put your brakes on.
Yeah, don't
I
forget
thought it
your
was
brakes.
pretty funny.
Yeah, but you could end up back in the first hospital.
Right. And I'm sitting on the floor laughing. And the nurses, I was able to ring for the nurses. And one came, looked in the door. He goes, oh, and runs off. Nurses are not allowed to pick you up, literally.
Really?
They can help you, yeah, they cannot. But they came with 3 nurses to get me off the floor. And they bring over the walker. I'm little. And this is the 2-wheel walker. And I said to him, are you serious? One of you get behind the wheelchair and hold it. And the other 2 can help me to try to stand up to get my butt in the wheelchair. So that's what they did. I'm sort of technically inclined, I think things through. Anyways, I thought it was pretty funny and stupid. 2 days before I'm supposed to go home, I fall on the floor. Didn't hurt anything. I had a slight, but anyway, it was really weird. But I was at one point, I had an appointment at the fracture clinic because he had to say yay or nay. It's really up to the physical therapist to say, I think you're ready. And then he wants to see the x-rays again. And so I went, I was supposed to go there, and people on my ward dared to get COVID. And I got pneumonia instead because I like to be different. So I was
But
on
this wasn't
antibiotics.
during COVID. This is fascinating. COVID's a couple of years ago, and yet obviously it's still hanging around, but you were still in an environment, it's a hospital where diseases can be picked up, but
Right.
being different like you normally are, everybody else got COVID, but you decided to get pneumonia. That's the
Right.
only reason that I put you on the podcast today, by the way.
I mean, so, and they actually brought in this humongous machine that looks like they're going to use it to tear down a house. And it's an x-ray machine. And yeah, the x-ray showed I had pneumonia.
Wow.
Obviously, not a great deal of pneumonia because I was on antibiotics for only 5 days and it was fine. So
I want to ask you something though. The whole thing is that you commented when we first started that you were able to go up and down the stairs that go up to the porch into your home.
I wasn't.
No, you were before you had your accident.
I wasn't.
Oh, okay.
That's what I said. I wasn't. When I stopped driving, I seem to have lost the ability to make it up the stairs on my own.
Okay. But where I was going with this, ladies and gentlemen, is we've noticed that when my mom got back home, because of all the good care and all of the excellent education, physiotherapy, etc., at the hospital system, they taught my mom how to go up the stairs a different way. And I can tell you, being the person who stands behind her quite often as she makes her way up these stairs, in fact, they did very well with you, and you do go up those stairs quite nicely. I'm glad you don't go by yourself. But what I'm pointing to is there were lots of things learned in your experience. You call it,
Sure.
You call it your 4 month, I even heard you call it your 4 month vacation. We may
Oh, my
have a
4 month trip.
trip. Okay, because once I heard vacation, I thought maybe we should look up the word in the dictionary. But the thing is, Mom, what just as we start to wrap this up, I wanted to ask you, what did you learn from this? Like, what sticks out the most in your mind, let's say, in your experience that you might pass on to others who end up in these care facilities, if you wouldn't mind?
Well, the important thing is your attitude, as far as I'm concerned. I had a roommate who was, I guess, terribly afraid that she would have pain, did not cooperate with the nurses trying to help her, to the point that I heard the nurse saying, "Let go of me, stop hitting me," while the woman was yelling at her in a foreign language. And the nurse ultimately walked out of the room because she didn't have to put up with that abuse. And the next shift said to me, "Was the nurse in here?" I said, "Did you read any reports?" And they said, "We haven't had time yet." So I wasn't going to say what happened,
Mhm.
but they knew that the woman had issues. I witnessed a complete break with what was happening, and security was called. It was fascinating to see how these young men dealt with a patient who had suddenly wasn't able to think properly. So I think the thing about going to the hospital, what I learned was be curious. Of course, I feel that way about life in general.
Yes, you
There
did.
is always something to learn. And any day you can learn something new is a good day. And anything that people are willing to help you with, you say, "Thank you very much." Instead of what you said when you were younger, which was, "Leave me alone, I can do it myself." There's no reason for that. Why not let people help you? Now, after the COVID thing, my leaving the hospital was delayed because, of course, I had been sick, but then they decided I should wait and have the new appointment with the fracture doctor before we left. Now, none of my children could come that day, and the hospital arranged for someone to take me to the fracture clinic. A young man who, I think this is a volunteer thing for him. It's certainly not his profession because he told me what he does. And he stayed with me the whole time. But no one could be there. So my daughter, who has my power of attorney and living will, and I and the surgeon FaceTimed. The surgeon stood close to me and they had the conversation. Interesting to me, he spoke to her, in my opinion, as his equal, medically equal. It was a very good conversation. There was no need for me to open my mouth, but it was like having one of my children there. So I'm very much into devices. I'm very techie. I recently had a place that gives me physical therapy and a PSW, etc. They wanted to give me a telephone extension. And the woman said, "Do you have pencil and paper?" And I said, "No, but I have an iPad and I'm already on that contact page. Shoot me the..." And she said, "Really? How old did you say you are?" Well, the first time in the hospital, they came to take me for arts and crafts. The physical therapist, he was really funny. They know how to do it, man. So I'm in the wheelchair and we're starting to move out of the room and we're talking and he stops the wheelchair And he bends over and looks at my face. And then in that hospital, they say, prove they were with you by taking pictures of your band on your arm. That shows where they've been. So he looks at my armband again, and he bends and looks at my face again, and he said, "You're really 91. Really? Hard to believe." And I thought, oh boy, you know how to play the game. I mean, sure, nobody knows what 91 looks like, because who the hell knows what it
91
looks
is what you look like. 70 is what I look like. Mom, I have to tell you something. I'm really privileged to have you on today, because anybody who has a parent your age is privileged. And I've been privileged anyways to have you as my mom. But ladies and gentlemen, the purpose of my mom, and I thank my mom because she really, really, here's a pun, put her foot down to get on
like.
podcast, because my mom wanted to share her experience. You know, what I
Yes,
learned, go
the
ahead.
thing that my primary reason was the reactivation center
Yes.
with the entertainment. But of course, every place I was superior. And under the circumstances, with being short staffed, you wouldn't know it because of the attitude of the staff, because they have a good attitude. There was an incident where a nurse could have had a slight loss of her calmness and left my room almost in tears and composed herself and came back. And it was something neither one of us could have prevented, and it was nothing much. But she was so affected that she might have done something that could have hurt me, which it didn't very much, that she had to leave the room.
Wow.
But came back.
I think,
So all of this under the circumstances of being harried and overworked and not getting enough sleep and working 12-hour shifts, they all are doing very well, as far as I could see.
well,
So
I want to thank you for this, Mom, because nobody wants an accident. Nobody wants anything unexpected, but unfortunately, at times life gets in the way. And people can pre-plan and protect themselves from these kinds of incidents. So I'm so thankful that you had generally a good experience. Now that you've been home, the system has provided home care for you that's been not only helpful for you, but everybody in your family, that we know that you have people. It has made a difference. And ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to put this on today for you because, along with last week's show, My Dignity, being able to financially pre-plan for these challenges, my mom did a good job of putting services in place prior to the accident. What I mean by that is, it is the system that she wears around her neck that can call for help. My mother does her best to stay in shape, and when she needs help, she's not afraid to ask for it. And what I would say to all of you is, whatever you can put in place before, it's super important, because if you have elderly parents, then you as kids are probably getting up there in age too. And the fact of the matter is, it's a team effort, and the family can be very helpful, but it's something to think about beforehand. And with that, I'm going to thank you, Mom. I'm glad that we did this. I'm glad that you're still
but
here.
I just thought of two more things very
Go ahead.
briefly.
Sure.
Okay. In the hospital in North York Activation, a person actually walks around to ask what you would like to eat and tells you what's on the menu. And one day I said to the woman, "I want a hamburger and French fries." And she said, "Me too. We're not getting it." I said, "How about pizza?" She said, "We're not having that either." Anyways, laughing and cheerful. That's one incident. The other, I was having lunch. I think my sister was there or my daughter. And I said to the air, "Oh, I'm not wearing a bib." They have these huge bibs. The man sweeping the floor said, "I'll get you one," ran out of the room, got me a bib, brought it in and put it on me and did it up. Oh, what is this? I mean, like everybody's on top of everything. That was in the reactivation. In Baycrest, people say I hate hospital food, and I have always said, what are you talking about? You don't have to shop, you don't have to cook, you don't have to clean up. And in Baycrest, you don't have to make choices. The dietitian talks to you, or you fill in a paper, and you get the food you like. And that's it.
Well,
They never
I-
ask you what you want.
Mom, I'm glad that it all worked out. We're very thankful. And each hospital, you gave a wonderful report. We all know that our healthcare system is so challenged and it's so hard for the workers, and yet you've given such a glowing report. Thank you. But ladies and gentlemen, as good as my mom has it, neither she nor I would recommend it. Better to
Right.
stay. With that, Mom, I love you. I thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening. We will be back next week on Monday, as we always are. Have a great week. Thanks a lot. Hey, everybody. Thanks very much for watching today. We appreciate it. Please subscribe to our podcast. It really helps us grow and it makes us stronger, and we appreciate you doing it.